The nation is in shock and deep mourning after witnessing a sniper's bullet snatch the life of Charlie Kirk from his wife, 2 young children, and conservatives from around the world. The alleged shooter is a homosexual male who lived with another man undergoing sex change procedures, and as of this report, evidence shows the shooter did not act alone. Shortly before the assassination, a self-identified transsexual named Sky Valadez uploaded a song to SoundCloud under the title Charlie Kirk, Dead at 31. And Kirk's assassination came just 2 weeks after a man identifying as a woman, Robert Westman, launched a deadly attack on Assumption Catholic Grade School, leaving 2 children dead, several wounded, and 1 clinging to life. What we are witnessing is a growing pattern of deadly violence perpetrated by a mentally and spiritually deranged movement of sexual deviancy. And the worst part, Catholic priests and bishops are pulling out all the stops to bring sexual perversion into the church. And while it's easy to point a finger at the low-hanging fruit of James Martin S.J., the Association of U.S. Catholic Priests are the ones working overtime behind the scenes with 2 condemned organizations to make the Catholic Church embrace homosexuality and transgenderism as a reality. Coming up on this special report of the Lepanto Institute. Trans violence has been on the rise for the last couple of years. Devin Erickson and Maya McKinney, who shot up a school in Denver, both identified as trans. Snokia Mosley, the shooter in Aberdeen, identified as trans. Audrey Hale, the Nashville shooter, identified as trans. Kim Bradley Carricker, a shooter in Philadelphia, identified as trans. The transgender movement is inherently violent by nature because the movement itself does violence to nature. Here they are in their own words.
Angry.
Go out, buy a gun.
It's okay to be angry.
Get out of my face now!
If you try to stop me from going into a woman's bathroom,
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
be the last mistake you ever make.
It is ma'am.
Find that anger.
Just because.
Harness it to do good in the world. This anger
Done, man. We can just make a batch and say that some of us well.
Anger is probably my primary source of motivation.
You want to call me sir again?
The thing is, you don't have to leave.
You will lose your bed.
For everything that I do.
Cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
You up.
It was a call to action or a call to arms.
Sorry, man. Don't be afraid to show your anger.
What we see happening in our country is horrifying, but it isn't happening in a vacuum. For every Audrey Hale, Robert Westman, or Tyler Robinson, there are priests and bishops affirming trans ideologies. 2 years ago, we broke a story about Common Spirit Health, the largest Catholic health network in the country, which was not only promoting transgenderism, even to the point of giving transitional hormones and puberty blockers to kids, it was actually performing sex change surgeries. And every year, we report dozens and dozens of organizations pushing LGBT ideologies that are receiving millions of dollars collectively from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. In 2021, 14 Catholic bishops signed a pro-LGBT letter for the Tyler Clementi Foundation. 2 of those bishops, Archbishop John Wester and Bishop John Stowe, are actual members of the Association of U.S. Catholic Priests. We already produced one report about the AUSCP's joint June assembly on the topic of sexuality and spirituality. In that video, we provided leaked audio of priests admitting to their homosexuality, to masturbating, one even calling his form of self-abuse a prayer, and to host perverse and heretical ideas. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. In addition to what we've already released, we also have audio from the AUSCP assembly where active homosexuals and transsexuals were invited to address these priests, giving testimony and calling for greater welcome and acceptance as they are. This session was sponsored by the condemned Dignity USA and coordinated by the AUSCP's Jim Muzameki, who sits on the AUSCP's Mutual Support Committee, giving assistance to priests credibly accused of sexually abusing minors. In this audio, you'll hear a woman posing as a man, giving her testimony to AUSCP members. All of this is part of an effort to show support and acceptance of such behaviors within the church.
My name is Emmett. I'm 31, and I was raised in a non-traditional family. My dad and my biological mom had me. They divorced when I was very, very young, and since I was about 4, my dad has been in a committed relationship with the same man. They're married now, and he is my dad. From a very, very young age, I was aware that I was different from other classmates. I grew up until I was 18 as a woman, and I knew for my whole life that that was not right. I see a lot of men in here. If somebody tried to put a dress on you, a lot of you might feel a little weird. My gender identity, my sexuality, I'm bisexual, caused a complete disintegration of any relationship I had with my mother, any relationship I had with her family. I was asked repeatedly to be somebody that I wasn't, and to hide who I knew that I was. Being embraced by my dad, being embraced by his husband, being able to transition and live my life the way that I know is correct for me and for my soul has made an incredible difference. I grew up in an abusive home with my mother and with my stepfather. They lost custody of me. And never once, when I was with my dad, when I was with his husband, when I was with the people at Dignity, did I feel scared. And that's something that I couldn't say for any other time in my life. When I was with my mother, when I was with her family, I was constantly scared. And science shows us what stress does to the body, what stress does to children when they're developing. I am married. I have a wife. I think the most difficult part about living the life that I do is being in rooms where other people think we're on the same team. So I'm in rooms where conversations happen very homophobic, very transphobic, and I have to sit there. Do I speak up and put a target on my back? Do I speak up and potentially lose my employment? Do I speak up and make things harder for my wife?
Following this testimony, several priests from the audience got up to give a few words. One told the story about how he encouraged a great-grandmother who was deeply upset about her great-granddaughter deciding to undergo a sex change procedure.
I developed a friendship with a woman who died last year at 103. When she was 102 years old, she called me and she was all upset. And I said, "Rita, what's the matter?" And she said, "I have a great-granddaughter who's a sophomore in high school, and she said to her parents that she's not happy being a girl. She feels like she needs to transition to be a male." And Rita said, and I just love her to death. She said we were very, very close, but her parents wanted to really chastise their daughter and so on, and get her all kinds of help and so on. Rita said, "What can I do?" I said, "Rita, you already said that you love her. You had a good relationship with her. I said, continue to love her, and uphold her for the person she is to you." Eventually, the father never agreed to any of it, but the mother finally did agree that it was okay for her to go through the transition, but she had to wait till she was 18 to do that.
The keynote speaker for the assembly is a condemned theologian named Todd Salzman. He's a Catholic theology professor from Creighton University. In 2010, Salzman co-authored a book titled The Sexual Person, Toward a Renewed Catholic Anthropology, which the USCCB roundly condemned for, quote, erroneous conclusions on a whole range of issues, including the morality of premarital sex, contraception, and artificial insemination. In his presentation to the USCCB, Salzman trashed the Catholic Church's approach to science because the Church teaches the self-evident truth that God created mankind as either male or female. Why? Because he wants to trash the Church's teaching on same-sex relationships and even parenting.
Galileo is alive and well in terms of how the Church uses science. So intersex, for instance, is a reality. World Health Organization recognizes about 1.7% of the population are intersex, okay? In Male and Female, he created the Congregation for Catholic Education. Intersex is mentioned once in parentheses, as if it doesn't exist. And yet it does exist, and science demonstrates there are over 70 combinations of chromosomal combinations and other variables that create intersex. It's a reality, okay? And they're human beings. We don't dismiss Down syndrome people because they're a minority, okay? They're created in the image and likeness of God. All people are, right? What are the implications of that for a strict sexual binary, male and female, and the anthropology and the norms deduced from that? Same-sex parenting. The science, sociological studies are overwhelming that same-sex parents and heterosexual parents can do the same job in parenting emotionally, psychologically, relationally.
About 50 minutes later, Salzman condemns the Church's teaching regarding the nature of objective and intrinsic sins and disorders.
The Church has to quit talking about queer issues in terms of objective disorder and sins as intrinsically disordered. Barbara McElroy has pointed that out. Others have pointed that out.
A few minutes after this, Salzman complained that the Church's teaching on unjust discrimination implies justifiable discrimination. He calls it sinful that the Church allows for justified discrimination, especially on the basis of so-called gender identity or sexual orientation. Let's be real about this for just a moment. As a father, I would never hire somebody living out a sexual fantasy that they were a member of the opposite sex, nor would I ever hire a homosexual to babysit. But Salzman says that for someone to do that would be sinful.
The Church teaches not unjust discrimination against queer people, which means what? Just discrimination. And yet Catholic social teaching says that we condemns discrimination on the basis of sex, race, religion, etc. Nothing about gender identity or sexual orientation. It's sinful that the Church uses that language and justifies it, and the USCCB has been fully complicit. There have been oppositional voices, but those voices are drowned out by the majority, and it is sinful.
In a Q&A session the AUSCP posted on its website sometime after the assembly, Salzman expressed hope that the Church's position on transgenderism might evolve.
As Bernard Lonergan talked about historical consciousness, human knowledge and understanding, especially human knowledge and understanding of the mystery of God, is evolving. And so what constitutes human dignity, created in the image and likeness of God, our understanding evolves and changes over time, just as it did in church teaching with slavery. Perhaps it will evolve and change in terms of the Church's teaching and understanding of transgender and queer rights and human dignity, etc., and the treatment and doctrines that flow from that definition of human dignity.
Later in that same Q&A session, Salzman attacks the USCCB for not standing up for transgender queer people against the Trump administration.
And the USCCB has to get its voice that's in line with Catholic social teaching and speaking truth to power, especially the power this administration is wielding against the poor, against immigrants, against a stranger, against transgender, queer people, etc., etc. They're othering and creating fear to motivate people, and unfortunately it's working, and unfortunately the USCCB is not responding to that in a way that's adequate.
Following Salzman's talk, Bishop John Stowe stood before the audience calling out the Lepanto Institute, saying that the AUSCP had given us plenty of material. He then went on to call upon the AUSCP to lobby the USCCB to require every priest ordained over the last 20 years to take a course in Catholic morality from Salzman.
You know, our friends from Lepanto Institute are around apparently, and I think we've outdone ourselves in giving them plenty of material to this. I think that Damien this morning invited us to consider ourselves as the fourth person of the Trinity. Imagine what their headline will be. And then, of course, Todd gave us volumes and volumes and volumes to be working on with them. But since this organization is not opposed to controversy, I would like to make a modest proposal. That the AUSCP lobby the USCCB to require every priest ordained in the last 20 years to take a course in Catholic morality from Dr. Salzman.
Rather fitting, since the AUSCP announced in June that the USCCB reached out to them to host a virtual consultation on a new USCCB document on the laity. You can read about that on our website at lepantoin.org. The AUSCP is promoting a violent ideology, and it is doing so with Episcopal oversight. The entire transgender movement is inherently violent because it does violence to nature, and as a consequence, it is violent to society. And history bears this out. Listen to what the ancient historian Flavius Josephus had to say about the violent acts perpetrated by deranged perverts during the siege of Jerusalem. With their insatiable hunger for loot, they ransacked the houses of the wealthy, murdered men, and violated women for sport. They guzzled their loot washed down with blood, and from mere satiety, they shamefully gave themselves up to effeminate practices, plaiting their hair and putting on women's clothes, drenching themselves with perfumes, and painting their eyelids to make themselves attractive. They copied not merely the dress, but also the passions of women, devising in their excess of licentiousness unlawful pleasures in which they wallowed as in a brothel. Thus they entirely polluted the city with their foul practices. Yet, though they wore women's faces, their hands were murderous. They would approach with mincing steps, and whipping out their swords from under dyed cloaks, they would impale passers-by. The AUSCP is a dangerous organization, and it must be roundly condemned by bishops across the board. Call and email Archbishop Broglio's office. Ask him, as head of the USCCB, to formally condemn the AUSCP, withdrawing any and all partnerships between the USCCB and that organization. And then call and write your own bishop, asking him to also formally condemn the AUSCP, forbidding his priests from having any contact with it. For the Lepanto Institute, I'm Michael Hitchborn.